Hey guys, tonight we're headed to the still, hushed streets of Edo-period Japan, cobblestones glistening under lantern light, a paper door creaking just slightly ajar in the night breeze, and someone is missing a shoji. You're standing guard in a quiet back alley, wrapped in the blue-gray robe of a Tokugawa night watchman. The city is asleep. The only sounds are the distant clop of geta sandals and the soft clinking of your metal nightstaff, meant more to reassure the citizens than to actually scare off any crime. But tonight is different. There's a riddle in the air. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink slowly as the scent of pine wood smoke lingers on your haori. Behind you, the last temple bell tolls, the signal that Edo has officially gone to bed. It's your hour now, the hour of the night watch, and your district, a patchwork of quiet merchant houses, tiny soba stalls, and a noodle-thin alley known as Cat's Whisker Lane, is your responsibility. That's when it happens. You turn the corner into Ume Row and pause. Where a door should be, there's nothing, just a gaping rectangular hole where a perfectly normal sliding shoji once kept wind, insects, and nosy neighbors at bay. No shards of wood, no scattered rice paper, no obvious signs of damage. Just an absence. You stare at it, a bit stunned. Paper doors vanish all the time in ghost stories and lantern-lit kabuki plays. But this is real, and tonight was supposed to be quiet. You crouch beside the doorframe, running a calloused hand along the polished wood. It's not splintered, not pried loose. It looks like the door simply slid itself off and walked away. Or was helped. Someone's shoji ran off, a whisper behind you says. You jump only a little and turn to see Old Man Genzo, the neighborhood incense carver, blinking at you under a stack of bundled cedar. Told you the wind's been behaving odd since last week. You glance up at the sky. No wind tonight, just stillness thick enough to stir your unease. So you do what any Tokugawa watchman would do. You write it down in the watch log. March 14th, 3rd watch. Incident 1-1 shoji missing. No suspects, no sounds, maybe self-removal, further inquiry required. It's a good entry. Respectfully vague. If this turns out to be a prank by the boys from the bathhouse again, you don't want it looking too dramatic in official records. But as you tie up your log scroll, another detail snags your eye. A faint, round mark on the ground just outside the missing shoji's frame. A light ash print, like the base of an incense holder, or a small foot wearing soft-soled tabi socks. Someone stood here, recently, long enough to leave a trace, but gentle enough not to alert a single soul in this sleeping block. You get up, eyes narrowing. Genzo has shuffled off. A cat meows lazily 2 rooftops away, and suddenly your whole district feels like it's watching you. That's when the bell rings. Not the hour bell, but the alert chime, the one you're only supposed to use in case of fire or major disturbance. You rush toward it, nightstaff tapping lightly, hoping it's a fluke, but down in Cat's Whisker Lane, a second door is gone. And this time, it belonged to the man who makes hinges. The second door is missing too, and suddenly, two's a pattern. You crouch at the edge of the narrow lane, barely wide enough for 2 men to pass without their sleeves brushing, and stare at the hinge maker's workshop. It's still locked, shutters bolted from the inside, but where there once stood a perfectly serviceable paper and lattice door, now there's just a rectangular ghost, again. No shards, no broken wood, just the exact, oddly precise absence of a door. You squint. The paper walls on either side still rustle gently, but not a single thread is torn. It's as if someone has lifted the door off its track and whisked it into the night like a kabuki magician. And this, you realize with growing discomfort, is the only street in Edo with its own resident door maker. It feels a little personal. The workshop's owner, a short man with hair tied too high and eyebrows like sleeping caterpillars, is already outside, tapping his foot in quiet disbelief. His name is Ijiro, and he has the manner of a man who believes even rice should obey. He smiles. I think so, my dreams got bigger. Back in the main room, you help her reorganize the panels again. It's a dance now. You know where she likes the wave patterns, which ones lean too much, which ones hum when placed beside certain others. She trusts you. Not with everything. There's still a sealed crate she hasn't opened, and you suspect room 12 is real, even though she insists the numbering skips for aesthetic reasons. But she trusts you enough to leave you alone for an hour, to let you brush rice paste over cracks, to share her barley candy stash from behind the lacquered screen. And tonight, for the first time, she lets you write a tag. The door is simple, pine, no carvings, a small ink smudge on the lower left, accidental or maybe deliberate. You pick up the ink brush, think. Then you write. North wall, river house, side 3,000 times before being replaced. You show it to her. She reads it, then nods. It'll do. You attach it with thread, step back, and for a fleeting moment, it feels like the panel sighs again, just once, then settles into its new life. Rain. Not the soft, poetic kind that Toa likes to mimic in her brushstrokes, but a steady, soaking, unromantic sort of rain that flattens the city and makes all the alley cats disappear. The kind of rain that makes the rice paper in your sleeves feel a little damp even before you reach the door of the archive. It drums on the tiled roofs in thick, wet syllables. By the time you slip behind the fishmonger's shrine and press into the warehouse, your hair is sticking to your collar and your sandals squelch faintly on the wood. Towa's already inside naturally, bone dry, drinking hot barley water by the charcoal brazier and scribbling something on a slip of thin washi. You look like a wet envelope, she says without looking up. You remove your sandals and bow slightly, half smiling. Rain makes the streets quiet. Rain makes the panels thirsty, she murmurs. We'll need to air them tomorrow. You glance around. Several doors have been pulled out and leaned against brazier stands, angled carefully to avoid warping. They glisten faintly, absorbing heat, releasing their smells of pine, dust, ink, and old wax. I brought something, you say. This gets her attention. You reach into your sleeve and pull out a small, neatly folded shoji slat. It's old, possibly too old, and cracked on one end, but you've wrapped it carefully in rice paper. You hold it out like an offering. Toa takes it with two hands, reverent. Her fingers dance across the grain as if reading Braille. Where? The Takamura residence. The abandoned wing behind the Vermilion Gate. Yuta said I could poke around. She examines it closely. Smells like vinegar ink. You think this came from a study room? Or a storage shed, you say. I found it wedged behind a broken water cistern. She nods. All the same, it wants to be here. She places it gently with two others of similar tone. Three sisters reunited after a long separation. You sit by the brazier. The warehouse hums with rain on the roof and the quiet breathing of drying paper. Do you think they miss their homes? You ask. Toa looks up. Some do. Some were never loved enough to care. That silence again. Not empty, never empty, but dense, purposeful. The kind that lives between people who've stopped pretending they don't understand each other. Later, Toa shows you her ink diary. It's not exactly a journal, not linear, not coherent in the traditional sense. Each page holds fragments, a phrase overheard from a panel, a sketch of a lattice shadow, sometimes just a swath of black or blue ink pressed from her thumb. One page simply says, "The wind moves differently through remembered air." Another, "Someone cried here once. You can still feel it on the frame." You turn each page slowly, wondering how much of this is real and how much is imagined. But then again, that's not the point. She watches you read, saying nothing. You pause at one sketch, an inked silhouette of a boy kneeling beside a floating door on a raft. "Is this?" She nods. "I saw it," she says, 3 years ago, just once." You raise your brows. "You've been doing this that long?" "I started younger than I should have," she replies, "or maybe older than I realized." Around the third watch, a visitor knocks. You've begun to recognize the rhythm, respectful, deliberate, not rushed. The people who come to the archive don't arrive by accident. Tonight it's a man in a carpentry apron. He bows low, carries a panel with a missing bottom rail, and says only, "This held back a storm once." Toa takes it, traces the edge with her finger, then gestures you to help her place it with the weathered collection, panels that survive typhoons, floods, and high winds. Each one bears water stains like tattoos of endurance. You label it, "Together." Stormkeeper, Autumn 1721, leaned but did not fall. She nods, "Strong one." Then, as you're returning to your seat, she asks, "What would your door say?" You pause, look at her. "Mine?" "If you were a panel, what would your story be?" You think, harder than expected. Then, "I'd be half repaired, a little crooked, from a room no one visits anymore." She smiles, "You'd still be worth keeping." Before dawn, the rain slows. You light a final lantern, adjust a tilted frame, and stretch your back with a crack that echoes louder than you expected. Toa sets out 2 tatami mats beside the brazier. "You can stay," she says simply. You don't hesitate. You lie down blanketless, your head resting against the side of a panel with inked fish and faded children's handprints. You feel warm, safe. And just before your eyes close, you think you hear something? Not Towa's breath, not the rain, but a voice, faint and sleepy, from the wood behind you. "I remember you." The sun rises with a pink softness, spreading light like a careful brushstroke across the quiet sprawl of Edo. Most of the city still sleeps. The temples begin their first bell. You wake not to sound but to warmth, the kind that pools through your sleeves and into your bones, and to the scent of toasted barley. Toa hands you a cup without a word. She's already dressed, already barefoot, already somehow looking like she's been awake for hours. You accept the drink and sit up, rubbing a faint line from your cheek where the edge of a panel left its quiet mark. Last night's memory is still thick and intact. The rain, the delivery, that soft whisper at the end. You consider telling her, but instead you just sip your drink and say, "I think one of the doors knows my name." She smiles over the rim of her own cup. "That's good. It means you're listening." You want to say, "No, not listening, it spoke," but again you hold it in. Not because you doubt it happened, but because, somehow, it feels like a secret shared only between you and that one specific piece of pine and paper. Later that day, back on your patrol, things feel different. Not because the neighborhood has changed, though a new flower cart has appeared on Sparrow Street, and the sake shop has added a sign that says, "No singing after the 3rd cup," but because you have. You notice things now. Not just sounds or suspicious movement, but tones, textures, emotional residue. At one point, you stand for 5 full minutes watching the way a curtain moves beside a bakery side door. It stirs slightly, always away from the frame, even when there's no breeze. You scribble a note in your log. Possible air memory. Wind prefers the left. You don't even care. if it makes sense to anyone else. That evening, Toa meets you at the edge of the canal. She's dressed in a soft gray robe, sleeves rolled slightly, a small wooden paddle slung casually across her back. Beside her floats a raft not large but sturdy, balanced. "You said you wanted to know where they go," she says. You stare at the raft. It's stacked with 3 doors tied down, wrapped in soft cloth to avoid splinters, balanced carefully across 2 wooden crates. "They're ready," she says. "Ready for what?" She steps aboard and turns, expectant. You follow. The canal is slow and silent, a silver ribbon through the back streets. The paddle barely disturbs the surface as Toa guides you both east, past shadowed shrines, past footbridges where no one stands. The city grows quieter with every meter. You wonder if you've crossed into a different Edo, one no one charts. Then ahead a dock. Small, unlit, framed by 2 large weeping willows that seem to nod in greeting. Toa moors the raft. You help unload the panels one by one, carrying them gently up the steps into what looks like a garden. Except it isn't. It's a courtyard, open air, surrounded by stone lanterns and low wooden benches, and at its center, standing like a sentinel, is a single, unremarkable gate. No walls, just the gate. And into this gate, one by one, you and Toa fit the panels. Not like a puzzle, like a story. They click softly into place, each one changing the tone of the space around it. By the time the third is in, the air feels different, thicker, like breathing through tea steam. Toa steps back and bows to the gate. You mimic her. "What is this place?" you whisper. She straightens, "A listening garden." You blink, like people come to hear the doors? "No," she says, "the doors come to hear the people." You sit there until moonrise. No one else comes. But as the breeze stirs and a soft hush curls around the space, you hear it. A whisper. A rustle. A laugh. It's not distinct, not quite audible, but it's there. You turn to Toa. "You built this." She shakes her head. "No, I just brought the pieces." You stay until the moon is high. Then walk home in silence. That night, you sleep better than you have in years. And your dreams are full of paper. 3 nights later, someone tries to steal a door. Not one of the archives, Toa would never allow that, but from a shopkeeper's house 2 alleys west of Cat's Whisker Lane. It's the first attempted theft since the incidents began, and it's messier, clumsy. The door wasn't removed, it was half pulled, then dropped, the paper torn, the frame cracked. Yuta finds it just past the hour of the ox, standing lopsided in its track like a soldier asleep at post. The household dog is barking, half-heartedly, and the merchant's son insists he saw a figure running. You arrive minutes later, brush in hand, hair still damp from a half-finished bath, and immediately recognize the difference. This wasn't one of hers. No sesame trail, no precise glide marks, no chalky rice glue, just a split track, a muddy footprint, and broken paper like a jagged scream. Yuta whistles, crouching beside the track. "Whoever it was," he says, "they don't know how to be gentle." You don't respond, not right away. Because you already know. That night, back at the archive, Toa is quiet. You tell her everything, slowly, carefully. You watch her face as you speak. At the mention of the broken frame, she closes her eyes. "I felt it," she says softly. Something shifted. She stands, moves to one of the outer shelves, and begins inspecting panels. Not frantically, but with attention you haven't seen in her before. You follow. "What does this mean?" you ask. She exhales. "It means someone else has noticed." You blink. "Noticed what?" "This," she says, gesturing around, "the archive, the memory, the hum." You frown. "You think they're trying to build their own? Or dismantle mine?" She picks up a panel, studies the grain, then gently sets it down. Her fingers linger on its edge a moment longer than usual. "This was always a quiet thing," she murmurs, "not secret, just sacred." You nod. "Maybe it still can be." She doesn't reply. But later, you find her whispering to a door near the garden end. You don't interrupt, you just note it. You spend the next week helping her reinforce. Not physically. There are no locks or bars in the archive, but spiritually, in a way. You reorder panels. You catalog the unlabeled ones. You create an orphan rail shelf for disconnected slats, strips and fragments that don't yet belong but might. You build what Toa calls a sleep map, a chart of which panels sing best beside which others, and how to arrange them so their moods don't clash. Each panel now has 3 tags: provenance, tone, and resonance partner. You add one to the pine and cat panel that you've secretly adopted. Soft murmurer, prefers sunrise light, dislikes wind chimes. You don't tell Toa, but she sees it later, and you find barley candy in your coat pocket the next day. Message received. Then, another attempt. This time from the opposite end of town. The attempt is even messier. The door was sawed. Sawed. You stand there, staring at the half-detached panel like it's been murdered. A neighbor saw a shadow, said the figure wore a hood, carried something long. Toa's first response when you tell her, "Not one of ours." Her second, "They're getting desperate." That night, you patrol alone. Not your shift, not your district. But you walk the side streets anyway, brush tucked into your sash, sleeves rolled slightly, shoes muffled with cotton. You find signs. Not many, just enough. A splinter caught in a fence. A dab of rice paste, sloppy and dried wrong. A pair of sandal prints leading nowhere. You trace them to an alley that ends in a dead wall. No gate, no latch. But the prints stop here. You press your hand against the wall. It's warm. Back at the archive, Toa is waiting with a question. What if it's not just one? You sit. You think there's a group? She nods slowly. Copyists, she says, collectors without care, archivists without patience, people who want the feeling without the listening. You stare at her, and what do they want? She looks you straight in the eye. Control. You whisper, "Of memories?" She shakes her head. "Of stories." The archive feels suddenly smaller, but not weaker, just more precious, more vulnerable. The next morning, a letter arrives. Folded neatly, tied with rice straw. No return mark. Just 4 characters inked precisely. "We heard first." You hand it to Toa without a word. She reads it, then burns it. No reaction. Just a whisper to the panel nearest her. "Don't worry, we're not done yet." You start sleeping with your staff closer to your hand. Not out of fear exactly, but out of readiness. Something about the burned letter, the broken door, the muddy footprints that led nowhere, it all adds up to a shift in tone. The archive's gentle rhythm has picked up pace. The panels creak slightly louder, even the wind feels more curious. And Toa, she's building something. She doesn't say what. She just asks you to help her move the lighter panels to the back room, the wide ones to the west wall, and the water-damaged ones into stacks of exactly 3, no more, no less. When you ask what for, she just says, "There's a pattern." Then she stares at a warped shoji from the south quarter like it might blink first. You start noticing new visitors. They don't come to the warehouse. They don't knock on the doors or deliver panels or offer stories. But you see them in the streets, pausing near buildings with older doors, standing too long outside narrow alleys. Not many, just one at a time, always hooded, always watching. Yuta even spots one near the carpenter's square and follows him for 2 blocks before losing him in a knot of noodle stalls. "Didn't walk like a thief," Yuta says, frowning. "Walked like a question." You know what he means. Toa finishes her structure at the end of the 4th night. You find her asleep in the middle of it, curled like a cat, ink on her sleeve, a panel tucked behind her back like a comfort blanket. It's not quite a shrine, not quite a sculpture. 12 shoji panels arranged in a circle, each angled slightly inward, forming a dome of sorts. The floor is covered in old tatami. In the center, a single lacquered bowl filled with clear water. You stand in the doorway a long time, unsure if entering might undo something. She wakes without moving. "It's ready," she whispers. You step in. It's cool, soundless. The city vanishes outside the wood and paper walls. "This is," you begin. "The archive's heart," she says. She sits up slowly. "I built it from the 12 panels that carried the strongest memory resonance, 3 from tears, 2 from laughter, 4 from meals, 1 from singing, 1 from silence." You sit across from her. It feels like a breath held. She nods. "That's the idea." You spend an hour inside. You say nothing. Neither does she. But you leave lighter, a knot untied behind your chest. She watches you go. The next day, a panel arrives by raft. No messenger, no note. Just a single door wide, older, with golden silk paper worn thin across its middle. It floats gently against the dock until someone notices. You and Toa carry it in together. "This isn't one of ours," she says softly. You nod. It bears no marking, no tag, but when you press your palm to the frame, it feels warm. Like it's remembering. You open the back ledger. It's already logged. In your handwriting. But you haven't written it. Toa stares. "Someone else is building," she murmurs. And now, they're speaking back. You double the patrols. Not officially, of course, but you walk further, slower, eyes lingering longer on every sliding door, every house still holding on to its older architecture. And you begin noticing small changes. Tags, like Towa's but different, cruder, hung lower, on doors that don't belong in any archive. One simply reads, "Taken." Another, "Ours." Toa sees them too. One day she peels one off and smells it. "Red ink," she mutters, "not rice-based." You ask, "Does that mean something?" She looks at you carefully. "It means it won't fade." A week later, one of the archive's panels is gone. Not a delivery, not a release. Just gone. You find the empty space at dawn. The others around it slightly tilted, as if surprised. Toa doesn't cry, but she sits with the gap for a long time, kneeling in perfect silence. Then she whispers, "It wasn't ready." You touch her shoulder. "I'll get it back." She doesn't respond. But you know she heard you. That night, the archive changes. You reinforce the structure, not with locks, but with patterns. Toa rearranges panels into sequences, looping resonance partners together. She places one angry panel between 2 sleepers, a peacekeeper. Another becomes a hinge connecting 3 thematic rows. You help her create a tracking ledger, provenance, tone, and status. She gives you your own shelf. You call it the half-remembered. You fill it with panels that feel like déjà vu, panels you don't remember finding, but that seem to recognize you. Every one is tagged. Maybe. And finally, she gives you a key. Not to a lock, the archive still has none, but to a box. Small, carved. Inside, a brush, a pot of her ink, and a tag folded 3 times. Blank. "You'll need it," she says. You ask, "For what?" But she's already walking away. You wait for the moment to come. You don't know what shape it'll take. Another stolen panel, a marked door, a message scrawled in red ink, but you know it's coming. The archive is no longer just a sanctuary. It's become a conversation. And now the other speaker is getting bolder. You've started carrying the box with you. Towa's key is tied to your sash, the brush sealed tightly in a wax cloth, the ink pot nestled beside it. You haven't used the tag yet. You're not even sure what it's for, but you feel its weight, its possibility. Yuta senses something too. He's begun patrolling more often off the books. No complaints, no jokes, just a kind of quiet presence, like he's decided to follow your lead even without understanding the script. One night, after a round of silent street loops, he asks, "What's the worst that could happen?" You pause. To what? He shrugs. This thing with the doors, the archive, the whatever it is now. You think about it. Someone could decide they want to control the stories, not keep them, rewrite them, turn them into currency. He nods, doesn't press further. Later, he gives you a small slat of wood. Found this outside the sake shop, he says, didn't feel right. You take it. It's not a full panel, just a crossrail, but it smells faintly of singed ink and something else, a bitterness you can't place. You bring it to Toa. She takes one sniff and grimaces. Red ink, she says. You both know what that means now. 3 nights later, you're woken before dawn. Not by a sound, not by a knock, but by a feeling. You sit up in the archive's back room, heart already pounding. You can't explain it even later, just that you knew something had changed. You find Toa already up, standing in the center aisle, barefoot on the tatami. The lanterns flicker low, and every panel in the room seems to be breathing, not swaying, not moving. Breathing. She holds a scrap of paper. No words. Just a faint pressed circle like a seal or stamp, half-formed. You take it from her gently. What does it mean? Her eyes are distant. They're inside. You search together. Room by room. Nothing broken, nothing missing, but panels have been moved just slightly, a tag flipped upside down, a resonance pair disrupted. One of the dream panels, the ones in the suspended ring near the archive's heart, now faces outward. You fix it quickly, breath caught in your throat. Why would they come, you ask, just to touch? Toa closes her eyes. They're not touching, she says, they're listening. That night, you patrol alone again. You walk to the gate shrine, to the shop with the crooked sign, to the back alley where you once followed footprints into a wall. And there, finally, you find it. A panel. Upright, propped carefully against the back of a silversmith's stall. It doesn't belong here. You step closer. It's old, very old, oak frame, woven reed paneling behind the paper. The ink is faded almost to nothing, but you see them. Characters. Not Japanese. Not Chinese. Just marks. Like the shape of sounds you almost remember. There's a tag. Red ink. You don't touch it. Instead, you open the box. You dip the brush into Towa's ink. And you write for the first time on your blank tag. Heard. You attach it gently to the strange panel. Then you sit beside it. And wait. They come before the second bell. You don't see them, but the air changes. The alley breathes in, then out. And when you blink, the panel is gone. But your tag remains, stuck to the wall where it once stood. Still wet. Still warm. You pocket it. You run. Back at the archive, you hand it to Toa. She holds it like it might dissolve. This is the first time we've answered, she says. You nod, felt right. She steps to the archive's heart, removes one panel, slides your tag into place behind it. Not hidden, not displayed, just held. And for the first time, you realize this isn't about preservation. It's a conversation, and it has only just begun. Spring slips into early summer with a kind of damp serenity, the kind that makes the wooden floorboards of the archive expand just slightly with each humid breath of the city. Cicadas haven't arrived yet, but you can feel them warming up in the trees. The panels have begun to sweat, their surfaces slightly tacky in the afternoons, their paper taking on a faint, sweet smell like old rice crackers and pine dust. Toa begins wearing her sleeves rolled again. Her hands are smudged with ink most days, and she moves with the focused grace of someone preparing for something that hasn't quite announced itself. You can feel it too. There's a pause, not peace, not threat, just stillness. Like the city is holding its breath. You and Toa begin organizing what she calls the parliament. They're 12 panels, rare ones, each with a strong personality, each somehow resistant to being placed anywhere near the others. You've tried before. They creak, they lean wrong, they hum slightly off-key. Once, 2 of them fell over without being touched, knocking over half the kitchen collection in the process. They need their own room, Toa says one evening, wiping her ink-streaked hands on her robe, a place where they can argue in peace. So you build one. Not a full room. Just a raised tatami platform at the edge of the courtyard, ringed by low stones and 4 carefully placed wind chimes to ward off whatever might be listening too closely. You place the panels in a circle, leave space in the middle for a single cushion. No tags, no candles, just silence. You visit it the first night, alone. You sit on the cushion, and you listen. What you hear is not voices. Not exactly. It's more like tones. The feeling of being watched by 12 very specific types of memory. One hums with the stubbornness of a child who won't nap. Another pulses with the heaviness of regret. A third smells faintly of sake and applause. You don't stay long, but you bow as you leave. And one of them bows back, its shadow tilting just slightly in the moonlight. A letter arrives. This time not left, sent. Proper postage, folded neatly, delivered by a real courier who has no idea what he's carrying. Toa opens it slowly with her sleeve. Inside, one small card. On it, in elegant brushwork. A listening space of our own, East Bank. You're invited. No signature, no seal. Just an address. You trace it on a map. It's a forgotten corner of Edo where the river hooks south before splitting near the dye houses. Nothing official is there, just old footbridges, water reeds, and the remains of a collapsed shrine. You and Toa look at each other. She nods. We go. You dress in your patrol robes that night for familiarity. Toa wears gray, her sash wrapped twice and tied like a traveling monk. She carries no lantern, just a folded panel slat in her sleeve, a calling card. You arrive at the East Bank just before midnight. It's quiet, cool, the reeds whisper, the city is a rumor. And then you see it. Not a building. A tent. Large, circular, made of woven reed and paper, lacquered for rain. It's not crude, it's intentional. Like someone took the shape of a yurt and whispered Shoji to it in their dreams. At the entrance, 2 guards. Not soldiers, not thieves. Archivists. You can tell by the way they stand. By the way they don't carry weapons. By the way they nod once in silence. You step inside. It's dim, lit by floating lanterns made from fragments of broken panels. And it's full. Dozens of people. Old, young, robed, barefooted, each moving carefully through an organized ring of displays, like an exhibition, but nothing is for sale. Each panel here has a story, each one mounted vertically, lit softly, tagged in red. You walk slowly, Toa at your side. You recognize nothing and everything. There's one with 3 holes, patched by children's drawings. Another that still has a broken comb wedged between the rails. One bears the scent of citrus. Another has a faint footprint too small to be adult, too neat to be accidental. Toa whispers, "They've been collecting." You nod. But then you see it. Near the back wall. One of yours. Not a replica. One that went missing. The cat tail panel. Still inked, still soft in color, still sighing. It's displayed like a centerpiece. You feel anger rise, but Toa touches your arm. "Look," she says. Below it, a note. "On loan, full resonance intact, with respect, we remember." You exhale. Not forgiven, but maybe acknowledged. You don't speak to the others that night, but you walk slowly, watching them. They're not enemies. Not entirely. But not family either. A second archive. Built in parallel. Listening differently. You leave with more questions than answers. But in your pocket, someone has placed a folded tag. On it. Let the panels choose. Back at the warehouse, Toa lays the tag on the table. She doesn't say anything for a long time. Finally, she murmurs, "Maybe they're right." You look at her. About what? Maybe we don't own this. You sit beside her. Then what are we? She smiles. Stewards, listeners, not collectors. She hands you your brush. You take it. And on a blank slip of paper, you write, "Listening." Then you hang it in the doorway. For all who enter. The next few days feel like a reset. No panels disappear. No new visitors knock. No red ink notes arrive folded in shadows. The archive breathes quietly again, as if it too needed a moment to process everything. Toa spends most of her time in the rear courtyard, rearranging the dream panels into new groupings based not on age or region, but on what she now calls seasonal temperament. Some panels, she says, hold spring better. Others seem to respond only when the night is humid. One, carved with delicate peonies and inked at the corners with childlike brushstrokes, refuses to be near any others at all. You help her arrange these shifts, gently lifting each piece, listening for its sigh of approval or its slight hum of discontent. Toa teaches you to read the weight in the rails, and after enough nights, you learn that a panel's story isn't just what's painted or etched, it's in its posture. This one belonged to a teacher, she says, gently running her fingers across a door with 5 mismatched lattice beams. He fixed it himself each time it cracked, never perfectly. That's a kind of love. You think more about the other archive, the one across the east bank. You dream of it sometimes now. Not nightmares, just questions. A girl in white, kneeling before a panel you can't quite see. A choir of paper rustling like leaves in wind that doesn't touch your skin. A single word whispered through woodgrain, choose. You tell Toa one morning. She listens, thoughtfully stirring barley tea, her sleeves damp from mist. I think we've been choosing too much, she finally says. Maybe it's their turn. And that's how the choosing shelf is born. A long, low rack built along the outer corridor, just beneath the scrolls. You and Toa stack 20 panels there, unlabeled, untagged, unranked. No provenance, no guidance. Visitors may take one, but only one. And not forever, each is borrowed on trust. You paint a small sign together in modest, sleepy brushwork. Borrow gently, return gratefully. The first borrower arrives on the 3rd night. A young man who once left behind an inked lattice from his grandmother's kitchen. He bows, walks the shelf slowly, then chooses a short, square panel with a blue thread tied to its frame. He says nothing, but he returns it 2 days later, with a plum blossom tucked behind its rail. The next visitor is a child, 7, maybe 8. He doesn't borrow anything. He just sits in front of the shelf, cross-legged, eyes wide, whispering to each panel one by one. Toa finds him fast asleep under the soft murmur you've claimed as your own. She tucks him in with a folded robe and leaves a barley candy by his foot. He said the doors made him sleepy, she explains to you the next morning. You nod. That means it's working. As the choosing shelf becomes part of the archive's rhythm, something else begins to happen. People start bringing stories. Not panels. Not slats. Just words. Spoken aloud, seated on mats, whispered to the open frames. A woman talks about her grandfather, who used to rap on the shoji 3 times before opening it, even when he was alone. A man confesses he carved his name into the lattice of his first home, then covered it with paper out of shame. An old midwife tells the story of a door that was opened at the exact moment of birth, for 3 generations in a row. Toa listens to each. Then she opens a new scroll and starts writing. You title it, Echoes Between Panels. You notice something strange the following week. Some of the doors are whispering your name. Not clearly, not loudly. Just once in a while as you pass, you hear it soft and low. You test it by walking backwards, nothing. You try walking past with cotton in your ears, still nothing. But when you walk with your heart a little too heavy, there it is. You tell Toa. She doesn't laugh. Instead, she says, that means they trust you. Then, one afternoon, someone tries to buy a panel. Not borrow. Not gift. Buy. He's dressed finely, merchant class, polished sandals, calligraphy, perfect speech. He gestures to a lacquered panel with a koi painting and says, name your price. Toa doesn't answer. You step forward and smile, too pleasantly. It's not for sale. He frowns. Everything is, if you know how to ask. You nod. Then gently gesture to the door behind him, the one he entered through. That one's free, but I'm afraid it doesn't listen. He scowls, leaves. Toa laughs for nearly 5 minutes. That night, you both sit on the roof of the warehouse. The stars are thick above Edo. The wind is finally warm. A panel nearby creaks once, then settles. Toa leans back. We've created something they don't understand, she says. You nod. And they're trying to figure out if it's power. It's not, she replies. It's kindness. You turn to her. She looks up at the stars and whispers, but kindness, when it echoes long enough, becomes something they'll never control. You fall asleep beside her, the panels breathing all around. And in your dreams, they whisper stories back. The morning arrives on the back of warm fog. Soft, damp, and thick enough that the city's lines blur just a little. The rooftops look like half-sunken ships, and the temple bells seem to echo from underwater. It's the kind of weather that makes you forget what season you're in, the kind where everything feels paused. Inside the archive, the panels love it. They hum softly, not loud, but constant, like the low rumble of an audience waiting for a play to begin. Toa walks among them barefoot, whispering a soft inventory under her breath. You're at the ledger, updating the returned with additions list. You've just written number 7, faint charcoal mark, possibly poetry, when the door opens. You both look up. It's the monk. The one who never gave you his name, who brewed you barley tea the night you found the second missing door. The one who always knows just a little too much and offers answers like riddles. He steps inside, bows low, and removes his sandals with care. Then he says, it's time. Toa straightens. Time for what? The monk smiles. For you to visit their archive. You blink. You mean the one by the east bank? No, he says gently, the other one. He doesn't give directions. Just a folded slip of paper with a single character on it. Reflected. Toa studies it for a moment. Then she nods. We'll need the floating panels, she says. You know what that means. By late afternoon, you've packed 6 panels, suspended ones, the ones that move too easily with wind and mood. They're wrapped in soft cloth, tied with barley string, and stacked in the old delivery cart that still smells like cedar and old ink. The monk doesn't walk with you. He just nods once as you leave. You'll know when you arrive. You walk until the city thins. Past where streets have names. Past the edge of the map. And then you see it. A pond. Circular. Perfectly still. With no path around it. Just a single dock, jutting into the water like a punctuation mark. Toa stops beside you. This is it. You both walk the dock slowly, wheeling the cart behind you. Then, without speaking, you untie one of the floating panels. Toa lifts it with both hands and sets it gently on the water. It floats, not sinks, not tilts, just floats. Then another, and another, until all 6 panels are resting on the surface paper, wood, ink, memory, forming a delicate arc like a bridge halfway written. Toa kneels at the edge of the dock and touches the water. The pond ripples once, then stills, and in the reflection you see it. Another archive. Not the one behind you, not the one across the river, but something else. An entire structure, mirrored perfectly. Panels suspended from nothing, doors opening into themselves, a space built not with wood, but with memory reflected. Toa closes her eyes. They've built it without touching anything, she whispers. You stare entranced. It's beautiful. And dangerous, she replies, because it remembers what never happened. You wait. And then, without sound, a woman appears on the opposite shore. She doesn't walk, she stands. Hair tied high, face unreadable. She wears the robes of an archivist, but different, angled, sharper. She raises a hand, not in greeting, but in challenge. She points to one of the panels. Toa nods, then lifts another panel from your cart and slides it into the water, face down. It vanishes, not sunk, not stolen. Accepted. The woman on the shore does the same. A panel slides toward you. You pull it from the water. It's cold and heavier than it looks. You and Toa carry it to the dock's edge. You unwrap it. It's old. Not Edo. Not anything you know. The ink is spiraled. The lattice is offset. There's a woven signature in the lower right corner in a language neither of you speak. But it hums. Toa presses her hand against it, then closes her eyes. They're asking for entry. You hesitate. Do we let them in? Toa looks at you. No, she says. We let them visit. That night, you hang the mirrored panel in the archive's central ring. Not permanently. Just suspended. Just listening. You don't add a tag. Neither does Toa. But as the candlelight hits the ink, it reflects onto the wall behind it and spells a single word neither of you wrote. Also, in your sleep that night, you dream of floating. Not water. Not wood. Just story, balancing on the thin, perfect surface of a pond that reflects only what it chooses. The mirrored panel stays exactly 5 days. It hums softly, no melody, no language, just a sound like breath caught in a memory. No one touches it. Toa makes it clear, not yet. Even Yuta, who shows up on the third day with barley dumplings and his usual dry commentary, stops short when he sees it. "Feels like it's staring at me," he mutters. "It is," Toa replies. She watches it from a distance, not as a threat but as a guest. "It wants to learn," she says, "but it also wants to be known." You begin keeping a second logbook, reflected records where you jot observations about the panel. No contact, no physical changes, but the light around it seems to bend slightly. Lanterns nearby flicker slower. Ink doesn't dry as quickly near it. Dreams grow stranger. By the end of the fifth night, it stops humming. You wake just before dawn, something tugging at your chest. You rise and walk the archive in silence. And it's gone. Not stolen. Returned. In its place, folded gently, is a square of paper the size of your palm. On it 3 brush strokes. Listened, understood, awaiting. Toa finds you holding it and nods. That was their first message. You hang the paper in the notations alcove, beside the earliest delivery tags. Then you begin preparing a response. Not a letter. Not a panel. Something in between. Toa calls it a resonance packet. 3 panels, selected not for their beauty or history, but for what they mean together. You spend hours curating. The first, a cracked panel from an abandoned playhouse, its frame etched with backstage cues in faint pencil. The second, a narrow lattice door from a noodle shop, still slightly stained with soy sauce and laughter. The third, an anonymous fragment half a frame, a diagonal slash of ink, and the number 14 carved into its underside. Toa threads them together with barley twine, ties them into a scroll of sound, and wraps it in soft linen. Then she hands it to you. "We don't deliver it," she says. "We place it." You return to the pond. It's just as still, the dock just as weathered, no wind, no watcher. You kneel, place the scroll on the water, and release. It floats, then sinks. Not quickly, not urgently, just purposefully. Gone. You stand. And wait. Nothing happens. No panel returns. No figure appears. But when you turn to leave, you hear it. One knock. From beneath the surface. Just one. The next day, the archive is restless. Panels shuffle slightly without touch. Tags twist on their threads. One panel, the stubborn one from the Parliament ring, tilts on its stand until Toa adjusts its base with a folded towel and a small murmured apology. Then, a visitor. She's old. Bent. Silent. But the moment she steps into the archive, half the panels lean ever so slightly toward her. Not ominous, just recognition. Toa greets her softly. "Welcome." The woman doesn't respond. She walks to the choosing shelf, runs her hand along each panel, stops at one with a lattice bent at the corner. She lifts it effortless despite her frame. Then she bows to it and walks out. No signature, no name, just gone. You glance at Toa. That's new. She nods. Sometimes the panels choose themselves. That evening, you discover a new section of the archive. Not built. Revealed. A slat in the back wall falls inward during your rounds. Behind it, a narrow corridor, no wider than your shoulders, lined floor to ceiling with fragments. Strips. Knots. Etched words. Ink ghosts. All unnamed. Toa follows your lantern light, eyes wide. "This is the archive's subconscious," she whispers. "Forgotten memories? Uncatalogued." You start a new logbook. The corridor of maybes. Days pass. And then, In the middle of an unusually windy night, a panel knocks. Not bangs. Knocks. Twice. From the inside. You and Toa freeze. It's the mirrored panel. It's returned. Not through the pond. Not through a visitor. It's just there. Standing upright. Wrapped in a tag. You unroll it. No ink. Just pressure. Embossed lines that catch the candlelight. A pattern. A map? Toa stares for a long time, then says, "We're not the only archive they're listening to." You blink. "You mean the other reflection?" She shakes her head. "I mean more. You sit. Hard. More archives." Toa smiles faintly. "I think we've only just started hearing the echoes." You wake the next morning with ink on your fingers. Not yours. Not Toa's. And not entirely explainable. It forms 3 parallel lines across your right palm, fading at the edges, as if someone traced them in your sleep. They don't itch, don't hurt, but they shimmer faintly when the lantern hits just right. Toa sees them over breakfast, rice, pickles, a lukewarm barley drink, and tilts your hand toward the light. "Echo marks," she says simply. You stare. "Those are real?" "They are now." The archive feels louder. Not in volume, but in memory. The panels shift more frequently, as though adjusting their own arrangements. Some refuse to stay where they've always lived. Others lean together in strange new pairings. Tags flutter even without wind. The corridor of maybes grows longer each time you enter it. Toa doesn't seem surprised. "They're not just remembering," she says. "They're responding." You get the next message in a folded panel rail. It arrives through the canal wedged in the back of a fishmonger's crate, waterlogged and lined with crushed pepper leaves. You pry it loose carefully. It bears no writing, but the grain of the wood has been singed with a pattern, 12 intersecting circles, none of them closed. Toa studies it for an hour. Finally, she declares, "It's a question." You blink. "About what?" She taps one of the circles. "Which of us listens first and which listens back?" That night, the mirrored panel hums again. But softer. This time, you hear something within it. A low murmur, like breath across a reed flute. You step closer, kneel. And it says a single word. Not out loud. In your thoughts. Center. Toa gathers 6 panels at dawn. All resonance matches, all former parliament members. She arranges them into a rough hexagon inside the archive's courtyard and places one empty frame in the center, one with no paper, no ink, no history. "This is where we let the story write itself," she explains. You stare. "You're serious?" She smiles. "You've heard them, you know." You spend the next night inside the hexagon. You eat there, sleep there, listen. And when you dream, it's not yours. You see, a gate that opens both directions. You hear laughter from a building that doesn't exist. You feel sadness from a panel never made. When you wake, your hands are moving, tracing, writing. You've never written like this. The tag you produce is simple, just 4 brush strokes. Toa sees it and gasps, then nods. The archive has answered. The next visitor is the boy again, the one who once slept under the soft murmurer. He's older now, taller, says nothing, but he walks straight to the empty panel in the hexagon and places his palm on it. Then he steps back and leaves. And on the panel, faint as breath, an ink line appears. A single curve. You and Toa stare. "It's beginning," she whispers. The next message arrives differently. Not a tag. Not a panel. A person. She steps into the archive during the hour of the ox. Middle-aged, wearing a robe made of panel fragments stitched together with thread and story. She says only one thing. "I bring the fifth memory." Toa bows low. "So do you." She lays a panel on the choosing shelf and leaves without another word. The panel glows. Slightly. You update the reflected records. Fifth memory arrived, not claimed, resonance uncertain. Toa reads over your shoulder, then adds her own note. "We don't choose it, it chooses us." The days that follow are strange. The corridor shifts again. Now the air inside smells faintly of plum and chalk. Visitors arrive without speaking, take nothing, and leave small objects: marbles, thread, origami cranes. The choosing shelf begins returning panels. 2 come back with new ink. 1 has a bite mark. 1 smells like honey. You stop questioning any of it, because it all feels true. One night, while you and Toa clean the ink brushes in silence, the archive hums again. Every panel, every shelf, every string. The room trembles, not in fear, in anticipation. Toa looks up. They're coming. You ask, who? She doesn't answer, but the mirrored panel gleams, and in its surface, for just a second, you see yourself, but older, holding a brush, and whispering to a door that hasn't been built yet. By now, your sleep cycles no longer resemble anything human. You doze at odd hours, head resting against a doorframe, arms crossed under a sun-warmed tag scroll, waking with ink on your cheek and the vague sensation of having listened to a memory that didn't belong to you. Toa sleeps even less. She claims the archive hums louder when the moon is full, and lately it's been glowing like polished bone in the sky, making everything beneath it feel slightly visible. Especially you. Especially them. It starts with a sound. A knock. But not from outside. From beneath. You're in the hexagon, fiddling with the new scroll rack, sorting through Toa's recently coined Dream Loops category when you hear it. Thud. Soft. Hollow. Measured. You freeze, press your hand to the wooden floorboards. There it is again. Thud. Like a heartbeat, or a hand against the bottom of a boat. You call Toa. She listens, then smiles. They're finally sending someone. You don't have a basement. Not officially. But Toa leads you past the corridor of maybes, down a staircase you swear wasn't there last week, into what she simply calls the substack. It's damp, cool, and filled with unfinished frames, bare wood, no paper, waiting for purpose. In the center, a hole, perfectly round. You shine a lantern inside. Something stares back. Not eyes, not a face, but a feeling. And then, a panel rises. Not pushed, not lifted, rises, as if being exhaled from the floor itself. Toa steps back. You catch it. It's heavy, damp, but humming, unlike any panel you've felt. And it's new. No tags, no writing. But the wood is strange, too dark, too smooth. And the paper? It's layered. 3 sheets thick. You try to peel one back. Toa stops you. Not yet, she says, it's nesting. You blink. She explains, some stories hide within others. This one is layered because it wants to be found slowly. So you wait. You build a cradle for it, 3 lacquered stands, silk cushions beneath the frame. You name it, the one that waited. And each night, you sit beside it. And listen. The archive changes again. Visitors come with questions instead of stories. They ask where their memories have gone. They ask if the panels know their parents. They ask if you can help them find a door they dreamed of as children. Toa answers each with a bow and a cup of tea. You answer by guiding them to shelves where they almost always cry. The archive is no longer a place to store. It's a place to seek. Then the sixth memory arrives. It's not delivered. It unfolds from the mirrored panel. At exactly midnight, a sheet of paper blooms from the surface like a petal in slow motion. It lands at your feet. Toa reads it aloud. Sixth, the silence between panel and frame. You stare. It's not a sentence. It's a location. Toa begins drawing diagrams. You fetch rulers. Together, you measure the space between 30 panels and their frames. Just one, holds a gap that's slightly wrong, by half a finger's width. You slide a tag into it. It disappears. Not falls. Vanishes. Toa exhales. They're building something inside the silence. Later that night, the first child returns. The boy, now taller, quieter. He walks into the hexagon, places a seed on the floor, and says, "She said I should leave this here." You ask, "Who?" He shrugs. "The woman behind the white door." You don't know what that means. Toa does. She plants the seed the next morning, in a pot, beneath the mirrored panel. 3 days later, it sprouts into something that smells like memory and plum blossoms. You wake the next night to another ink mark on your hand. This one a circle, drawn by someone while you slept. When you show Toa, she says, "Now you're part of the map." Then comes the dream. A door opens onto another door. And that one opens into a room full of doors, each whispering something in a language you're slowly beginning to understand. You wake with one word on your lips. Listen. And the feeling that soon someone will arrive. Not with a panel. Not with a question. But with an answer. The answer arrives on the back of a kite. Not flying, not soaring, drifting. Caught in the branches of a persimmon tree just 2 rooftops over from the archive, Yuta spots it first during his patrol and calls for you with an urgent wave and a mouth full of steamed bun. You climb the tree. Not because you're agile, Toa is much better at that, but because something in your chest tells you this one's yours. The kite is old, handcrafted, pale blue paper stretched over a light wooden frame stitched with red thread that's fraying at the knots. No tail, no markings until you flip it. And there it is. Not a tag. A door. Drawn in delicate brushwork. A tiny panel inked right into the paper's belly, with 2 wide black strokes suggesting it's open. Inside, written in perfect miniature script, "We are ready." You bring it to Toa. She doesn't speak for a long time, just runs her fingers along the drawn edges of the door, nodding to herself like this was the page she was waiting for in a very long book. Then, "It's time to finish the hexagon." You blink. "It's not finished." She shakes her head. "That was the beginning. This," she taps the kite, "this is the invitation." The final piece is built from 7 fragments. Not one panel, but slats, paper scraps, ink curls, thumbprints, pressed tears. You and Toa spend 3 days arranging them. It's not construction, it's translation. Each fragment belongs. You don't know how you know that. You just do. Together, they form a frame with no backing, no paper, just air and memory. You lift it carefully. Place it in the center of the hexagon, where the empty frame used to stand. And for the first time, The entire archive falls silent. A stillness deeper than quiet. A pause. That night, the visitors come. Not one. Many. Some you recognize. Some you don't. One girl walks in backwards, humming. An old man places a stone beside the choosing shelf and whispers, "Thank you for keeping her voice." A child leaves a folded coat that smells like bamboo and home. No one takes. Everyone leaves. You notice the panels don't shift anymore. Not on their own. They've settled. Listened. Answered. You ask Toa, "Is it over?" She laughs gently. "No," she says, "but it's become something else." The mirrored panel dims. Not fades. Just quiets. You touch it one morning and feel peace. Not emptiness. Just enough. You hang a new sign above it. Written in soft strokes. "We heard you." The hexagon becomes a shrine. Not sacred, not untouchable, but honored. Visitors sit in its center and speak their stories aloud. You record them now on fresh scrolls titled Echoes Shared. You write slowly, deliberately, because each syllable matters. And not all stories arrive the first time. One afternoon, a breeze slips through the archive. It carries no scent, no dust, just the sound of a paper door sliding open from somewhere no one can see. Toa looks up, then down. She smiles. They built their own. You ask, who? She replies, everyone we listen to. You sit. Let that settle in your chest. And for the first time in weeks, you allow yourself to cry. Just a little. Because something has ended. And something even better has begun. The next morning, the panels hum again. Soft. Rhythmic. Like the sound of pages turning. Or someone knocking. Gently. To be let in. The archive doesn't celebrate anniversaries. It doesn't track time like people do. There are no seasons marked with garlands, no engraved dates on corner beams. Its only clock is memory, and memory, as you've come to understand, folds back on itself, expands, waits, reappears. But still, it's been a year. Toa confirms it casually, over breakfast one morning, while unwrapping a bundle of dried plums left anonymously on the choosing shelf. Did you know, she asks, pulling one free, we started a year ago today. You blink, we? She smirks, well, I started long before, but you, yes, 1 year, since the first vanished Shoji. You nod, slowly. It feels longer. It feels like forever. You spend the morning dusting the Parliament ring. The panels are still bickering in their way, tilting against each other, requiring subtle interventions, shifting places overnight. The tall one with the knot in the center refuses to face west. The peony-painted one demands sun between the second and third watch. You appease them, offer tea, whisper thanks. Then move on to the corridor. The maybes have become more assertive lately. More than once, a fragment has slipped free and joined a full frame as though called. Toa suspects they're building new memories from dreams. You don't argue. A new visitor arrives mid-afternoon. She's young, dressed in travel robes, carries a small bundle, carefully wrapped. Says her name is Kana. You guide her in. She walks slowly, eyes wide. Stops at the soft murmurer. Whispers, it's you. You glance at Toa. She's already pouring tea. Kana unwraps her bundle. Inside, a broken panel frame, just the edge, one slat. But the ink on it. You know it. Your own handwriting. From a note you wrote months ago and forgot. Kana reads it aloud. Maybe, but maybe means there's still time. You sit down, Hard. Towa's eyes soften. That was from the corridor, she says. How did it reach you? Kana shrugs. I found it in a dream, folded into a paper boat. You don't speak for a while. That night, you hang the fragment in the hexagon's center. Not as the centerpiece. As the root. You plant it in a shallow tray of barley husks and let it rest beneath the open frame. It doesn't hum. It breathes. The mirrored panel changes again. This time not in sound. In reflection. It no longer shows just you. Or the room. It shows possibility. 12 panels not yet built. A door ajar in a city not yet real. Toa watches with you. And murmurs, they're inviting us to grow. You don't reply. You just fetch a scroll. And begin sketching. Not what is, but what might be. The archive hums more softly now. Not tired. Just settled. You find yourself smiling without meaning to. Yuta brings soba one afternoon and says, you look different. You shrug, maybe I remember more now. He eats a noodle. Says, you remember everything. And walks away before you can argue. He's not wrong. Later, you and Toa sit on the roof again. It's warm. The moon is a soft smear above the clouds. She leans back. Says, do you think they'll ever stop coming? You answer without hesitation. No. She smiles. Good. Because neither of you built this to be finished. It was always meant to continue. Not as a monument, but as a whisper. Past door to door. Person to person. Across time. Across silence. Into listening. The first letter from outside Edo arrives in early autumn. It's wrapped in oilcloth, sealed with a pressed coin, and smells faintly of camphor and smoke. No return name, no crest, just a single kanji stamped into the paper. Still, you and Toa read it together. The brushwork is precise, controlled, but not cold. The writer introduces themselves only as a collector of rooms, and explains, in careful terms, that they have encountered a door that speaks in languages no one around them recognizes. They've tried paper rubbing, echo tracing, even incense scribing, all familiar techniques from the archive's more experimental days. Nothing. Until they whispered, I'm listening. Then it opened. Not to a place. To a memory. Not theirs. Yours. You and Toa sit in silence a long time after reading. Finally she says, we've begun echoing outward. You nod. Then ask the obvious, do we respond? She looks up. We already have. You begin building the echo chamber. A simple space. Octagonal. Each wall holds one panel chosen not for age or origin, but for message. Some are blank, others etched with only one word. Ask, stay, hush, remember. Visitors are invited to enter and speak aloud whatever they're carrying. Their words are not recorded, not repeated, only absorbed. Some cry. Some sit for hours, saying nothing. One child tells the same story 5 nights in a row. On the 6th, the room sighs. You and Toa feel it in your chests, like something settled, understood. The child never returns. You add a new tag to the wall. Known. One evening, the mirrored panel flares. You rush to it, heart thudding, brush ready. But no message appears. Just a reflection. Not of the room. Of another panel. One you've never seen. Toa stares beside you, her voice just a whisper. That's not ours. It's odd. Tall, curved at the top. Painted with stars. But behind it, someone steps forward. A figure, eyes like yours, holding a scroll. Toa reaches toward the glass, but the image fades. You both sit breathless. The next day, a traveler arrives, not seeking a panel, but returning one. You and Toa recognize it instantly. One of the oldest, thought lost before the archive even had names. He bows deeply, speaks in a dialect neither of you fully understand, and offers no explanation. But on the back of the panel, written in soot and sea salt, is a single line. It found me. You place the panel in the corridor of maybes. But that night it moves, climbs out of its place, and joins the Parliament ring on its own. Toa just nods. I had a feeling. By late autumn, the archive begins speaking more clearly. Panels knock in patterns, 5s and 7s. Paper curls slightly toward certain voices. Ink brushes left uncapped move gently toward resonant scrolls. You begin teaching the children who visit to listen with their feet, standing barefoot on the tatami, feeling the hum rise through their souls. They don't ask questions. They just smile and press their palms against the walls. One night, Toa finds you asleep in the echo chamber. You wake to her kneeling beside you, a small smile playing at her lips. I think you've become part of it, she says. You stretch, joints aching, mind full of soft dreams. I think it's become part of me. A new scroll arrives from the south, written on rice straw paper, stitched with lavender thread. Inside, one sentence. If I build a door and no one opens it, does it remember me anyway? Toa reads it 3 times, then replies in her smallest, most careful brushwork. If you built it in hope, it always does. You attach it to a bird-shaped panel. Release it by raft. You never see it again. But one night, weeks later, a dream wakes you. A room with no walls. A door with your handwriting. A child whispering, "Thank you." You don't ask questions anymore. You just keep listening. Because everything that matters now already knows how to find its way home. The first snow falls softly, without ceremony. It arrives in the early hours, dusting rooftops and riverbanks, catching on the tips of thatched eaves, pooling in the corners of shoji tracks left open just a little too wide. The panels creak more slowly in the cold. Their hum takes on a lower tone, deeper, rounder, like a lullaby heard through wool. You wake to the scent of roasted chestnuts and old paper. Toa's already outside, brushing snow gently from the choosing shelf. She works in silence, sleeves tucked up, a knit scarf someone left hanging on the entry panel looped around her neck. You're up late, she says, not looking at you. You smile, or very early. Inside, the archive glows warmer than usual. Visitors come in quietly, holding small wrapped parcels, gifts, offerings, sometimes memories disguised as objects. One man brings a bell with no clapper. A woman carries an empty ink bottle that rattles when shaken. A child, bashful and grinning, hands you a folded piece of paper with a single word on it, again. Toa opens the notation scroll for the season and writes at the top, "Winter's first panel, the one that returns." You add your own line underneath. Snow remembers what the ground has forgotten. A new panel arrives with no escort. It stands upright at the gate one morning, half covered in frost. The frame is thick, the paper yellowed and stretched. When you touch it, the cold stings your fingertips. On its surface, someone has etched 12 dots in a loose arc. Toa squints at it, not a constellation. Maybe a calendar, you offer. She shakes her head. An invitation. You build a place for it, an alcove with a skylight, where snow can land lightly on its top rail and melt slowly into memory. You hang a single tag beneath. awaiting interpretation. And people come, not to solve, just to be with it. They sit nearby. They whisper things they didn't mean to say aloud. One person hums, and the panel swells slightly in its frame. It doesn't reply, but it listens, like all good doors do. The mirrored panel grows still, not dull, just full. It reflects now not only what's in front of it, but what's near. A ghost of a laugh from an hour ago. The afterglow of a visitor who cried last week. The shape of something you almost remembered before waking. Toa says it's reached capacity. You nod. Should we cover it? She smiles. No, we honor it. You drape a soft cloth over the top edge and leave a barley sweet at its base. Visitors now bring panels with names, not tags. Names. I'd like to place Misaki near the warmth panels. This one's called Father's Elbow. It always squeaked when he was late. Can you hang not anymore beside something hopeful? You always say yes. And the panels always fit. Even the difficult ones. Especially those. One snowy afternoon, a child asks, "Why do the doors stay?" Toa kneels beside him. Because they're heard here. He nods slowly. But what if they want to go? Then we let them. He thinks, then points to one. This one wants to go. You check the tag. It's an old one, long thought settled. But now it hums oddly. The panel's edges are warmer than the room. Toa touches it, then lifts it. You open the gate and carry it outside together. You leave it at the shrine near the frozen canal. Just leaning. Just waiting. By sunset it's gone. You record it in the ledger as Panel Departure Number 7, left by request, journey unknown. Toa adds a postscript. Left no message, that was the message. Later that night, you find a new page added to the dream scroll. You didn't write it. Neither did Toa. It's written in the clean, looping hand of a visitor long gone. The ink glows slightly in moonlight. It says, "Thank you for letting me stay." You sleep with that scroll under your pillow, and dream not of doors, but of comings and goings, of snow melting in familiar footprints, of stories curling like steam from a warm cup, and of a door that knows just when to close, and when to open itself again. You begin to forget which panels arrived when. Not because you're careless, but because memory has stopped being linear inside the archive. Time folds here. Days blur into warm tatami afternoons and paper-lit evenings. Seasons echo in the smell of each panel's wood grain. Even the visitors speak as if from different eras. You no longer ask, "When did this come in?" You ask, "What has it remembered?" Toa builds a listening bench. Not for sitting, for waiting. She places it just outside the Parliament ring, under the awning where light and shadow play evenly. A single cushion rests atop it, woven straw, embroidered with a pattern of waves that resemble the grain of polished panel wood. She tells you, sit only when you don't know what to ask. You sit 3 times in a week. Each time you leave knowing something new. That the ink bottle on shelf 14 still smells like burnt plums. That panel number 22, Folded Storm, hums when a cat walks past it. That the mirrored panel, though silent now, has started showing echoes of echoes, not reflections but impressions. You stop trying to interpret. You simply listen. The choosing shelf gives back something extraordinary. It returns a panel, one you've never seen. Tall, thin, unmarked. But when you hold it, your arms feel lighter, as if memory has become less a weight and more a current. Toa watches you cradle it. She says nothing, but her eyes glint the way they did the first time the corridor whispered your name. You place the panel above the door to the archive. You don't tag it. Visitors pass beneath it and slow down, just slightly. Some breathe easier. Some cry. A few turn and whisper "thank you" before entering. You call it the threshold. Then, in the 5th week of snow, someone brings a panel wrapped in silence. Not literally. But that's the only word for it. It makes no sound when it's unwrapped. Even its paper doesn't rustle. It's cold without chill, light without shadow. And when Toa lifts it, her eyes fill with tears. Not sorrow. Recognition. This is the one we left behind. You don't ask how she knows. You just kneel and help her mount it. It fits beside the mirrored panel. Perfectly. No adjustment. No explanation. Its presence fills a gap neither of you realized was still open. Toa places a single grain of barley in its bottom corner. "You're home," she whispers. That night, the parliament hums together. For the first time. No dissonance. No tilt. Just a quiet, unified sound like snow melting on warm stone. You and Toa listen from the rafters. She leans her head on your shoulder and says, "They've forgiven us. You've begun writing less. Not because the stories have slowed, but because they now complete themselves." Visitors bring panels with their own tags. Children leave poems behind, tucked into railings. Once, someone leaves a recipe, and the next week, 3 visitors bring the same dish. The archive feeds itself. Yuta stops by with a scroll under his arm. "Still not haunted," he mutters, half smiling. You grin. He opens the scroll. Inside, a crude drawing of a panel shaped like a crescent moon. "I dreamt it," he says. You point to a gap in the corridor. "That's where it belongs." He blinks, then nods, doesn't question, just walks it over and sets the scroll down like a seed. The next day, a panel appears there, crescent-shaped, faint ink marks exactly like his drawing. You don't say a word. He bows to it and leaves. Near year's end, Toa brings out a box. Inside, all the tags you've written. Hundreds. Each one folded, faded, some smudged with tea, others still stiff and fresh. She reads them one by one over 3 nights. Each time she finishes a stack, she places them in the brazier. Not to destroy. To warm the room. She says, memory is not for hoarding. And the smoke curls around the beams like a song only the panels understand. The mirrored panel flickers one final time. You approach. It shows nothing. Then, your own hand, placing the very first tag. The one that began it all. Toa joins you and says, "It's telling you something." You nod. "I know." You take a brush, dip it in ink, and write the last tag. "We are here." You hang it above the mirrored panel. The air stills, and for a long time, everything is quiet. By spring's return, the archive no longer feels like a secret. Not because it's been revealed, not loudly, not publicly, but because it has woven itself into Edo's breath, like smoke from breakfast stoves, like wind pressing gently through pine, like a song hummed without memory of its origin. People know. Not all. But enough. Enough to speak of the door that sighs, of the shelf that listens, of the woman and the watchman who never close the gate. Today, the panels bloom. Not literally, but it feels that way. Toa strings soft ribbon paper between frames and a visitor, without asking, begins clipping pressed flowers to the lines. No one minds. The flowers belong. So do the people who leave them. So does the soft, continuous hush of paper, moving like grass in wind. You sit near the hexagon. Watch a toddler toddle through, touch a panel, and giggle like the door whispered something very funny. You believe it did. Toa brings out a final frame from deep storage. It's curved, regular, stitched with 5 types of wood. She tells you this was meant for the last story. You help her hang it above the listening bench, but leave the space inside empty, not as a challenge, as a promise. It's the archive's only unwritten panel, a door still waiting to become. You place a blank tag at its base, ink beside it. No instructions, only an invitation. Visitors begin writing their own. One leaves, I almost forgot who I was. Another, this door knew my grandmother. A child scribbles, it made me taller. And one final tag simply reads, I stayed. The mirrored panel dims one last time. Its glass no longer shows futures or pasts. It just shows the room. You and Toa. And 1,000 panels, softly arranged, gently breathing, whispering between themselves. One night, a wind moves through the archive without touching a single lamp. No chill, no fear, just a feeling of pages turning, of stories settling, of something finishing without ending. Toa finds you seated in the Parliament ring, eyes closed, listening. She joins you. No words, just the quiet understanding that this, finally, is enough. You rise, place your palm on the threshold panel, and bow, then turn, and walk the archive one more time. Soft shoes, soft thoughts. Every panel you pass murmurs something faint. Not goodbye. Just, still here, still listening. And when you leave, you close the shoji behind you, with both hands, like closing a book that will always wait, to be opened again.